There is a place you visited before you knew the world was complicated. A wood, a bear, a jar of honey that never quite stayed full. You didn't analyze it. You didn't need to. You just lived there for a while. But somewhere between childhood and now, someone told you something. That the bear has ADHD, that the donkey is clinically depressed, that the small trembling pig is a textbook anxiety case, that the boy who plays with them all may be hallucinating every single one, and now you can't unsee it. The question isn't whether A.A. Milne intended any of this. He didn't. The question is why we need him to have done. This is Parallel. And tonight, what if the 100 Acre Wood is really a map of the mind?
Parallel takes one what if and follows it wherever it leads. Like and subscribe if you want to come with us. Let's begin.
I have a confession to make. I was supposed to be preparing a lecture on childhood development. Instead, I spent an hour diagnosing stuffed animals. Pooh, always distracted, always circling back to the same fixation. Honey, honey, honey. Eeyore, who wakes every morning already defeated. Piglet, who flinches before anything has even happened. Tigger, who burns so brightly he can't sit still, can't stop, can't land. I closed the book and sat with what I'd done. I'd taken innocence and turned it into a case file. And the worst part? It felt true. Not because Milne wrote it that way, but because I recognized them. My patients, my colleagues, myself. And that's when the unsettling thought arrived. If I can read disorder into a bear of very little brain, what story can't I pathologize? What character anywhere is safe from the diagnostic lens? Maybe the question isn't what's wrong with Pooh. Maybe the question is, what's wrong with us for needing to ask?
The idea that the 100 Acre Wood is a psychiatric ward did not come from A.A. Milne. It came from a joke. In 2000, a group of Canadian psychologists published a paper in a medical journal. It was deliberately playful, a satirical exercise in applied diagnosis, using familiar characters to illustrate real conditions for students. The paper was never meant to be taken literally. It was a teaching tool with a wink. But the internet has no memory of winks. By the time the theory reached blogs, then Facebook, then TikTok, the joke had been stripped of its irony. What was satirical became factual. What was playful became authoritative. And what A.A. Milne wrote as a love letter to his son's childhood became, in the popular imagination, a secret diagnostic manual. The original books were written in the 1920s. Milne was a man who had survived the First World War. He wrote about a gentle wood, a faithful bear, and a golden afternoon because the world outside was anything but. There was no hidden psychology. There was a father trying to give his son somewhere safe to live, for a while. Here is where it gets uncomfortable. Once you learn to read disorder into stories, you cannot stop. Sherlock Holmes, the manic focus, the crashes into numbness, the inability to function without a problem to consume him. Hamlet, the paralysis, the rumination, the inability to act even when he knows exactly what must be done. Hercules, the episodes of uncontrollable rage that destroy everything he loves. The Greek gods themselves, Zeus and his impulse control. Narcissus, whose disorder we literally named after him. Every hero, every villain, every beloved character in the history of storytelling becomes a symptom. And this is where the theory stops being fun. Because real ADHD is not Pooh's charming forgetfulness. Real depression is not Eeyore's sighing gloom. Real anxiety is not Piglet's endearing trembling. These are conditions that fracture lives, that cost relationships, jobs, years, that sit with people at 3 in the morning in ways no children's book has ever captured. when we reduce them to cartoon shorthand. When someone says, "I'm having an Eeyore day," we are standing at a very fine line. On one side, a bridge, a way in, a language for people who have no other words. On the other side, a dismissal, a trivialization, dressed up as empathy. Winnie the Pooh is not unusual. We have always read ourselves into fiction. Pixar understood this perfectly when they made Inside Out, a film that didn't just depict a child's emotions, but gave them names, faces, and narrative arcs. Audiences wept, not because it was sad, but because it was accurate, because finally something had mapped the interior in a way they recognized. We do this because stories are the oldest psychological technology we have. Long before clinics and diagnoses and the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, human beings processed their inner lives through narrative. The anxious person saw themselves in the trembling hero before the battle. The grieving person found themselves in Orpheus, descending. The person who could not stop, could not rest, could not be satisfied, found themselves in Sisyphus, rolling the stone. We have always been doing this, turning stories into mirrors, turning characters into confessions. The 100 Acre Wood theory is not new thinking. It is ancient thinking, wearing a clinical coat. There is a world in which the diagnostic lens never switches off. In that world, every restless child is a Tigger waiting for medication. Every quiet child is a piglet to be monitored. Every dreamer is a Pooh to be assessed. And industries grow around that world. When disorders multiply, so do diagnoses. When diagnoses multiply, so do treatments, therapies, prescriptions, programs, products. There is a difference between naming something so it can be helped and naming something so it can be sold to. The 100 Acre Wood theory began as a joke and became a cultural meme. But underneath the meme is a genuine and serious question. Where is the line between empathy and pathology? Between recognizing yourself in a story and being told that what you recognize is a disorder? Between compassion and commerce? Here is what A.A. Milne actually gave us. Not a diagnostic manual, not a psychiatric ward disguised as a children's book. A wood where it was safe to be exactly what you were. Pooh didn't need to be fixed. Eeyore wasn't a problem to be solved. Piglet's fear didn't disqualify him from the adventure. They were all simply themselves, and they were all simply accepted. Perhaps that is the real map of the mind the 100 Acre Wood offers us. Not a catalogue of disorders, but a reminder that the full range of human experience, the distracted, the melancholy, the fearful, the relentless, has always belonged. We were never meant to diagnose the 100 Acre Wood. We were meant to live in it. The psychologist closed the book, sat quietly for a moment, then opened it again. Not to diagnose this time, just to remember. This was Parallel. If the question stayed with you, you're one of us. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next What If.